Hey everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. I am going to talk about an in-depth video, practically how to dispute irrational beliefs, why core fears drive the OCD cycle, the common mistakes I made, and everything else in between. Some guidelines that we use and I recommend in my coaching, which will look different from person to person when an individual comes in, because this is what I do and I try to get an idea, and you'll never know for sure the type of personality traits that the person possesses. Sometimes you get people that come in and they want to read all the books in 3 weeks. Sometimes you get people that come in and trying to read the books is like pulling teeth. So my homework recommendations on disputing beliefs will look different from person to person. Before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button down below. Let me know if you have any questions about disputing beliefs or guidelines around it, what we recommend. And if you're interested in our coaching and webinar services, please email us at phil@ocdrecovery.com. Again, that is phil@ocdrecovery.com. This video will be specifically more of an educational video. I've done many like this. So I'm going to use the fear of rejection from the body image perspective as the example in this book, but you can plug and chug anything in this particular manner. So where do you get the book? Right here's book number 1. And it's called How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, Yes Anything, by Dr. Albert Ellis. Now, let me give you a little bit of a background on Dr. Albert Ellis. Dr. Albert Ellis started out as a psychoanalyst and as an analyst, and he practiced psychoanalysis. And he realized that the Freudian theory primarily wasn't enough to curb people of their emotional disturbances, as activating events in their life and genetic predisposition wasn't really the primary problem for most people's strongly held emotional disturbances deep into their life, whether things happen to them in their life and everything else in between. So there was kind of a mixture of things going on with that. In 1953, he started practicing the principles, which would then be REBT, rational emotive behavioral therapy, on himself in the Bronx Botanical Gardens in his fear of rejection. And he showed himself and taught himself that changing your strongly held irrational beliefs, your musts, shoulds, and oughts, how the life should be, how the world should look at you, why things shouldn't happen, these deeply held beliefs that don't make a lot of sense in the practicality of life, because life just is. Even the strongest beliefs that we hold, whether they're beliefs on money, religion, and politics, it doesn't matter how many people hold them, they're still beliefs that cannot be substantiated in large universal claims. If you have 8 billion people on earth and 6 billion people hold the same belief, that doesn't mean it's a law. It just means it's a common belief. And this is something that can be broken down. It's also important to realize that acceptance doesn't mean agreement. And that will be for another video. There's a really good video on our channel from a couple years ago. If you go to the acceptance playlist and you type in acceptance doesn't mean agreement, Kirsty has done an amazing video on that. And I think that really breaks down that principle. So you find this book at ocdrecovery.com underneath the free resources tab. It's the first book. Yes, the book is not for OCD specific. Most books that have OCD in the title that I've come across and read or seen synopses on don't really cover OCD at the chronic level. They might work with mild OCD, and some of the principles in the book are good for distancing yourself from thoughts, but there's a lot of compulsions and or reassurance behaviors in the top OCD books that are still quite mainstream. They were good for the time being. They're more than likely not good anymore. We now know what really works, working with thousands, if not tens of thousands of people. I really don't probably know any other organizations that work with such a high load of chronic OCD and anxiety sufferers like we do. And we work with people all over the world. So if you're coming in and you think there'll be a language barrier, we can get translators on the calls. I've done that in multiple different languages. So let's start with some general recommendations that I recommend when you first get the book. The first thing I tell people is to read the book fully through and skip over the exercises in the chapter until they're done. Again, these are all recommendations. They're not set hard facts, but I do think there's a lot of applicability for doing this. Now, I believe there's about, let's see how many exercises there are in the book. Let's go to the last couple ones. Let's see. This is the appendix. Let's go back. There's probably about 20 exercises in the book, I'd have to imagine. The back of the book is just kind of some insights and stuff like that. But I would say there's probably maybe 17 to 20 exercises in the book. If you look at my book and the way how it looks, a lot of this was compulsive, but if you look at a lot of people's books, some people aren't note takers, but I usually can get a good sense when people are bringing in their homework assignments to me on where their mindset is. Do I think that you can recover by never writing the exercises on paper? Yes. but I look at it more from the perspective of you're teaching your brain that you're going to take it seriously. So writing your beliefs down on paper, because what a lot of people do is they'll be out somewhere and they're constantly trying to push away thoughts and change beliefs in the moment when they're triggered. And this is a slow chipping away process. It's like if I told you you were commissioned to build a cathedral that would take you 100 years to build. Very common in Rome, for an example. Some of these cathedrals have taken 300 years. I think the Sagrada Familia in Spain has been being built now for like 190 years. So it will take a while to chip away. It's obviously not going to take 190 years, but I think you understand the analogy that I'm using, that it takes time to really change these belief systems that we hold. So I do recommend reading the book fully first, going through, highlighting. I recommend reading 20 minutes to 30 minutes, 5 to 7 days a week. A lot of people say to me, it's too confusing. What if I go backwards? I'm not really going to jump into all the compulsions I see, rereading lines, compulsively taking notes where there's really no balance. You're going to fall into some of those compulsions. That's okay. You're not going to be able to get all your compulsions gone right away. So one of the most important parts of the journey is realizing that compulsions will probably be there for a while. Now, I want to go to page 96, 97. This is called the DIB sheet, the Disputing Irrational Belief sheet. This is the exact sheet. I do recommend that you either photocopy or print out, and you do fill this out a couple times a week. Another thing people ask me, should I be filling out the same thing over and over again? Should I be changing things? What does that look like? How do I go about doing that? And I'm going to give you a practical example again about body image, as I think this is something that many people struggle with. Excuse me. It doesn't really matter if we call it body dysmorphia or body image related fears. There's some sort of a belief about rejection or fear of failure and judgment. So remember, what happens is we have activating events plus belief systems equal consequences. Most people on earth, including myself, until I learned these principles, thought in a strong way that activating events primarily equal consequence. So someone cuts you off on the road, that person made me mad. I'm mad because you cut me off on the road. It just doesn't work like that, because if 100 people cut someone off, even the same individual is not going to respond the same way. Maybe you've had a tougher morning, you have kids, they were screaming, cut you up all night. Maybe you got refreshed sleep. That same situation, if it happened 100 times, you're not going to react the same way all 100 times. It might be split into quarters. It might be split into 6. It might be even half-half. So let's jump right into it. So the activating event is the fear of rejection, or the fear of looking overweight, or the fear of feeling overweight or fat, or not having muscle, or any of the other fears that you have about your particular body image. Okay? Then you have what's called irrational beliefs. Those are demands, awfulizing and catastrophizing, frustration, tolerance, and self-downing. So I'll give you some examples that I really struggled with. I must be attractive and I must never gain weight. If I get fat, it's 100% horrible. If I lose muscle, it's 100% horrible. It's absolutely awful, terrible, and catastrophic to not have the physique and or the looks that I want to have. I can't stand feeling overweight. More so the feeling for me, if you looked at pictures of other angles. Life is not worth living if I can't have the physique I want. I know that sounds crazy to some people, but this is something that really affects a lot of people in the fitness world. Now, the activating event of rejection, the body image, and all the beliefs I just held will now equal what's called the consequence. And that consequence can lead to emotional disturbances and behaviors. And those behavioral patterns are compulsions and or avoidance behaviors to escape the way you're feeling. So it will be anxiety, fear, shame and embarrassment, rage and anger, guilt, depression, problematic jealousy and envy. We see this a lot. Oh, they look that way. I want to look like that. All you can do is accept your genetics, make a balanced approach to exercise and cardio, balanced approach to nutrition and supplements. Anytime you swing to too far of an extreme, you're probably going in a slippery slope, especially when it comes to OCD and anxiety recovery. And now you have the maladaptive behaviors, which is compulsively exercising, compulsively doing cardio, compulsively tracking your calories, taking way too many supplements, avoiding sugars, avoiding carbs, avoiding fats, avoiding eating before 6 o'clock, compulsively doing intermittent fasting, compulsively doing flexible dieting. All you can really do, if you really want probably the best psychological results, again, accept the way you look, make balance changes, and accept that you might not look the way you want to look while striving for that. One of the hardest things for people to do is to accept the way they look right now while in pursuit of what they want. but accepting that they don't need to reach that in order to have some sort of contentment. The fitness industry specifically, and especially fear of rejection, this goes way beyond the boundaries of looking a certain way, has convinced people that they must look a certain way in order to accept themselves. Now, let's go to the disputing. And again, if you look at mine, I've written this out numerous times. I have journals upstairs. I write personal goals down. I think it's important to really take this seriously. Again, to show yourself that you're taking the time out of your day to make this an actual habit. Where is holding this belief getting me? Is it helpful or getting me into trouble? Well, holding the belief that I must look a certain way is definitely getting me into trouble because it's creating depression, anger, resentment against myself for falling back into compulsions, shame and guilt for not looking a certain way and not liking the way I was seen. Is it really awful or terrible to be overweight, to be fat, to not have muscle? It's not 100% awful. Yes, you can dislike it. That's where acceptance doesn't mean agreement comes in. But when you view it in that black and white manner, that's what gets you into trouble. Am I totally a bad person for being fat, for being skinny, for not being physically attractive, et cetera, et cetera? One of the hardest things for people to do is accept the realities of their own life and realize there's many things they're not going to be able to achieve, more than likely. There's a lot of stuff on social media that tells you some people are genetically gifted in different ways. Some people are very good looking. Some people are not very good looking. Some people are very patient. Some people have to work really hard at being patient. Some people have ADHD like myself, where it might be a little bit more difficult to concentrate, but they can try their best. For some reason, physical looks and fear of rejection has been perpetuated in society as this ever all obtainable, you need to have this in order to have this perfect life. I'm friends with people that aren't the most physically attractive human beings. They don't care a whole lot about what they look like physically, but they have a lot of other things going for them. They have good families. They have good income. They're fairly balanced in other areas of their life. But because when people see people who are overweight, for an example, they say that person's a loser, but then that's really not what's going on. There's a lot of other things. We can't take a human being in one act to find them in their whole human complex. So this is the thing. It takes a while to break this down, but you can get there and realize that the way you look cannot scientifically define your personhood. You have value just for being alive, and everything else in between is just the bonuses. It doesn't mean humans don't perform good and bad acts. I'm just saying that. That's a totally different conversation. Now, what are the new effective new philosophies that will get you to your new effective, new healthy emotional disturbance? So I would like to look a certain way, and I can work towards looking a certain way, but I don't have to have that. It may be bad or unfortunate to be fat, skinny, not have muscle, have my partner reject me, have society reject me. It feels bad, but it's not 100% awful. It's chipping away. Again, a lot of people say, well, I don't care what anyone thinks about me. You do care, and that's okay. It's natural to care what other people say about you. This is another problem with social media, convincing you to not care what people say about you. There's a difference between concern and over-concern, and that's the main thing you want to remember, okay? I can accept myself as a fallible human being, even if I was overweight, even if I got injured and couldn't work out, even if I wasn't physically attractive, even if I didn't like my haircut, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this will equal those new functional, healthy behaviors, which is balancing exercise, not needing to compulsively show off on social media. A lot of people are stuck in this conditional self-acceptance trap on social media, thinking they have to prove themselves over and over and over again. And then this is healthy concern, disappointment, healthy annoyance, healthy regret, healthy sorrow, and stuff like that. Like, I'll give you an example for myself. I really do like the world of bodybuilding, and it would be cool for me to get back on anabolic steroids and really push the limits and eat this very strict lifestyle. But I've gotten myself to a point where that is not what's important to me anymore. What's important to me is building a physique, being healthy, but also being balanced about it and realizing that I'm not going to be able to substantiate my personhood off the way I look. So the moral of the story is you can plug and chug any of your beliefs into this. All your fears of losing control, the fears of rejection, whether it's body image or other things, work-related fears, death-related fears, fear, the fear of being stuck forever, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really important. Remember, again, the guidelines. Disputing your rational beliefs on paper is something that's used in the beginning. It's not a forever tool, but it helps you set up structure. If you've never done this before, you're really doing yourself a massive disservice. Have some fun with it. You're going to doubt everything. Am I doing this properly? Am I doing this right? Is this et cetera, et cetera. Take the risk that you could be doing something wrong and go along with it. That's so key for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, if you have any questions, please email us at phil@ocdrecovery.com and we will get back to you in a timely fashion. Thank you so much, everyone. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day.